The stars looked different this far from Earth. Taeyang Park stood in the observation deck of the Horizon's Promise, watching the endless black stretch before him. He had been a combat medic for 6 years now, but this was his first deep space assignment. Most days were boring, checking supplies, running drills, treating the occasional headache or sprained ankle. He liked it that way. The alarm changed everything. Red lights flooded the corridors as Taeyang ran toward the bridge. His boots echoed on the metal floors. Other crew members rushed past him, their faces tight with fear. When he reached the command center, he understood why. The view screen showed ships. Dozens of them. They were massive, each one 3 times the size of the Horizon's Promise. Their hulls were dark purple, almost black, with strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. They had appeared without warning, surrounding the human vessel in a perfect sphere formation. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center of the bridge, her jaw clenched. "Any response to our hails?" "Nothing, Captain," the communications officer replied. "They're not jamming us. They're just not answering." Taeyang took his position at the medical station. His hands moved automatically, preparing emergency supplies. He had trained for this scenario 100 times. Alien first contact gone wrong. Hull breach. Mass casualties. He tried not to think about the fact that those drills always ended with most of the crew dead. Then the alien spoke. The voice came through every speaker on the ship at once. It was female, or at least it sounded female. The words were clear, perfect English with no accent at all. "Human vessel. We are the Velrathi. You will send representatives to meet with our queen. This is not a request." Captain Rodriguez looked at her senior staff. "Opinions?" "We can't fight them," the weapons officer said quietly. "Our missiles would barely scratch those hulls." "We can't run either," added the navigator. "They have us boxed in completely." The captain nodded slowly. "Then we meet with their queen." She turned to scan the bridge. Her eyes landed on Taeyang. "Park, you're coming with me." "Me?" Taeyang blinked. "Captain, I'm just a medic." "Exactly. If this goes wrong, I want someone who can keep people alive. Besides, you're calm under pressure. I've seen your record." She began selecting others. "Han, you're our xenobiologist. Reyes, you speak 6 languages. Kim, you're tactical. We leave in 10 minutes. The shuttle ride to the alien flagship felt like falling into a grave. Taeyang sat between Dr. Bora Han and Lieutenant Kim, trying to keep his breathing steady. Bora kept muttering calculations under her breath, her fingers twitching like she wanted to take notes. Kim sat perfectly still, his hand resting near his sidearm. They all knew the weapon would be useless, but the weight was comforting anyway. The alien ship's docking bay was enormous. Hundreds of smaller craft lined the walls, each one different from the next. The air smelled strange, sharp and clean like ozone after a lightning strike. As the human delegation stepped off their shuttle, Taeyang noticed something odd. There were aliens everywhere, but none of them came close to each other. They moved in careful patterns, always maintaining at least 2 meters of distance. The Velrathi were tall, taller than any human. Their skin shifted between shades of deep blue and purple, covered in fine scales that caught the light. They had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on their faces, and their hands ended in 3 long fingers. Each one wore elaborate armor that covered them from neck to foot. Not battle armor, something ceremonial, beautiful and intricate. "Follow," one of them said in that same perfect English. The voice came from a device on its chest, not its mouth. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Taeyang watched the aliens carefully. They never touched. When 2 needed to pass each other, they would stop, wait, and move in a careful dance that kept them apart. It reminded him of people avoiding contact during the old pandemic back in the 2020s. But this seemed deeper, more instinctive. The throne room was vast and empty. At the far end, on a platform of black stone, sat the queen. She was larger than the others, her armor more elaborate. Gold and silver patterns wound across the dark metal. Her scales were deeper purple, almost black at the edges. But it was her eyes that caught Taeyang's attention. All 4 of them were fixed on the human delegation with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Humans," she said. And Taeyang realized with a start that her voice came from her own mouth, not a translator device. "I am Queen Ashira. You are the first of your kind to stand before me." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I am Captain Maria Rodriguez of the exploration vessel Horizon's Promise. We come in peace. We had no knowledge of your territory." I know. The Queen's voice was soft, but it carried through the massive room. We have watched you. For months we have observed your kind, your ships, your colonies, your way of life. She leaned forward slightly. You fascinate us. The way she said that last word made Taeyang's stomach tighten. We are honored by your interest, Rodriguez said carefully. Perhaps we could establish formal diplomatic relations. Tell me, the Queen interrupted. Is it true? What we have seen? I don't understand, Your Majesty. Ashira stood. She was at least 7 feet tall. She descended from the platform, moving with careful grace. The human delegation tensed, but she ignored everyone except Taeyang. She walked directly toward him. You, she said. Step forward. Taeyang glanced at the captain. Rodriguez nodded slightly. He took 3 steps forward, his heart hammering. The Queen stopped in front of him, so close he could see the individual scales on her face. This close he could smell her, something like cinnamon and metal. In our observations, she said quietly, we have seen your kind do something we thought was impossible. She reached out slowly. Her hand was shaking. May I? Taeyang didn't know what to say, so he nodded. Her 3-fingered hand closed around his wrist. Her grip was gentle but firm. Her scales were smooth, cooler than human skin but not cold. She stood there holding his wrist, and Taeyang watched as all 4 of her eyes went wide. A sound escaped her throat, something between a gasp and a sob. Why won't you touch me, human? She whispered, and there was something desperate in her voice. Why do you pull away? Does it hurt you? Taeyang realized she was right. He had instinctively tried to withdraw from her grip just a fraction. Not because it hurt, it didn't. Just reflex when a stranger grabbed him. No, he said. No, it doesn't hurt. Then why? A sharp command in an alien language cut through the room. One of the armored guards stepped forward, speaking rapidly. The Queen's hand dropped from Taeyang's wrist. She turned away, but not before he saw something in her eyes. Longing. Sadness. Something that looked almost like grief. You will return to your ship, she said, her voice formal again. We will contact you again soon. Do not leave this system. The guards ushered them out quickly. As they walked back through the corridors, Taeyang kept replaying that moment. The way she had held his wrist. The way her hand had trembled. The question that made no sense. When they reached the shuttle, Bora grabbed his arm. Did you notice? She asked urgently. Notice what? The armor. All of them covered head to toe. And they never touched each other. Not once. Not even accidentally. She looked back at the massive ship. What kind of species never touches? Taeyang rubbed his wrist where the Queen had held him. He could still feel the pressure of her fingers, the coolness of her scales. I don't know, he said quietly. But I think we're about to find out. The conference room aboard the Horizon's Promise was packed. Every senior officer sat around the table, along with the specialists who had met the Queen. Taeyang sat near the end, still feeling the ghost of Ashira's grip on his wrist. 3 days had passed since the encounter, and they had heard nothing from the Velrathi fleet. The alien ships just floated there, watching. Dr. Borahan stood at the front, projecting images onto the wall screen. I've analyzed everything we recorded, she said. And I think I understand what we're dealing with. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. Go on. Look at these images. Every single Velrathi wore full body armor. Not just on the flagship. I checked our scans of the other ships too. They're always covered. Bora switched to a thermal scan. And watch how they move around each other. The footage showed Velrathi crew members in a corridor. They moved like dancers, each one flowing around the others without ever coming within arm's reach. When 2 approached from opposite directions, they would stop, wait, then proceed in a careful sequence. It's not just protocol, Bora continued. It's instinct. They're hardwired to avoid contact. She pulled up a molecular diagram. I managed to scan the Queen's hand when she touched Taeyang. Her nervous system is incredibly dense, far more nerve endings than a human has. I think physical contact between Velrathi might be painful. The room went quiet. Painful how? Asked Lieutenant Kim. Imagine if every touch felt like static shock or worse. Their entire species evolved with a nervous system that makes contact agonizing. Bora looked at Taeyang. But she touched you, a human, and it didn't hurt her. Taeyang remembered the wonder in the Queen's eyes, the way her hand had trembled. She asked why I wouldn't touch her back, he said quietly. She asked if it hurt me. Because to them, Bora said, pain from touch is normal. They probably can't imagine it any other way. She switched to another image, this one showing Velrothi architecture from their scans. Look at their cities. Wide streets. Buildings spaced far apart. No crowded spaces anywhere. Their entire civilization is built around avoiding physical contact. Captain Rodriguez rubbed her temples. So we're dealing with a species that has never known gentle touch. Never held hands. Never embraced. Never comforted their children. Bora added softly. Never held their dying. They've been alone for their entire evolutionary history. The door chimed. The communications officer entered looking pale. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Queen. She's requesting another meeting. Just her and, he looked at Taiyang. Just her and Corporal Park, private audience. Everyone started talking at once. Rodriguez held up her hand for silence. That's not protocol. We don't send people alone into potentially hostile situations. With respect, Captain, Taiyang heard himself say. I don't think she's hostile. I think she's curious. Curious about what? About what it's like not to be alone. 2 hours later, Taiyang walked through the corridors of the Velrothi flagship again. This time, only 2 guards escorted him. They brought him to a different room, smaller, more private. The walls were covered in what looked like star charts, but the symbols made no sense to him. Queen Ashira stood by a window that looked out into space. She wasn't wearing her formal armor anymore. Instead, she wore something simpler, though it still covered her completely. When she turned to face him, Taiyang noticed she looked tired. All 4 of her eyes had dark shadows beneath them. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this is unusual. Your Majesty. Taiyang wasn't sure if he should bow. He settled for a respectful nod. Please sit. She gestured to 2 chairs positioned across from each other. And call me Ashira. When we are private, titles are exhausting. They sat. The distance between them was exactly 2 meters. Taiyang had started noticing these measurements now. Ashira folded her hands in her lap, her 3-fingered hands covered by thin gloves. I must apologize for my behavior at our first meeting, she said. I was overwhelmed. We have been studying your species for several months, watching your ships, your colonies, and the more we learned, the more impossible it seemed. What seemed impossible? You? She leaned forward slightly. Your people touch each other constantly. We have watched your medical facilities, doctors holding patients' hands. We have seen your families, parents embracing children, partners walking with arms around each other, friends patting shoulders, shaking hands, casual contact happening dozens of times a day. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. We thought it was some kind of performance, something you did for cameras. We could not believe it was real. Taiyang thought about his sister Minji, how she always hugged him when they talked through video calls, how his mother would squeeze his shoulder when he was upset. Simple things. Automatic things. It's real, he said. But it doesn't hurt you? No, He searched for words. Touch can be comforting, reassuring. It's how we connect with each other. Ashira made a sound, a harsh exhale. Connect, yes, that word. She stood and walked to the window. Do you know what our word for touch is? It's the same word we use for wound. They are identical in our language. Taiyang felt something tighten in his chest. When I was young, Ashira continued, I asked my mother why we couldn't hold each other. She told me that the universe made us this way to keep us strong, that needing others was weakness. That independence was our greatest virtue. She touched the window with one gloved hand. I believed her. All of us believe it. What else can we do? Is that why you wanted to meet with me? She turned back to him. I had to know. I had to see if it was possible. If a species could exist where touch was not pain. She moved closer, stopping at that careful 2-meter distance. When I held your wrist, Taiyang Park, I felt your pulse. I felt warmth, and there was no pain. For the first time in my life, I touched someone and there was no pain. She was shaking again. Can we? She hesitated. Can we try again? I need to understand. I need to know if it was real. Taiyang stood slowly. What do you want to do? Show me. Show me how humans touch each other. He thought about all the ways humans made contact. Handshakes, hugs, pats on the back. He settled for the simplest one. He held out his hand, palm up. This is how we greet friends. A handshake. Ashira stared at his hand like it was a miracle. Slowly, carefully, she removed her glove. Her scales caught the light, shifting from purple to blue. She placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool and smooth. Taeyang closed his fingers gently around hers and moved their clasped hands up and down once, twice. A simple handshake. Ashira made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "It's so simple," she whispered. "So easy. You do this every day?" "Every day," he confirmed. She didn't let go. What else? Sometimes, when someone is sad or scared, we put a hand on their shoulder. Like this. He released her hand and gently placed his palm on her shoulder. Through the thin fabric, he could feel her warmth. Ashira closed all four eyes. A single tear rolled down her face. "I am 300 years old," she said quietly. "I have ruled an empire for a century. I have commanded fleets across 1,000 worlds. And in all that time, no one has ever done this. No one has ever touched me gently." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "How do you survive? Knowing that this exists? Knowing that we have lived all our lives without it?" "I don't know," Taeyang said honestly. He removed his hand from her shoulder and she looked disappointed. "But maybe things can change." "Change?" She laughed bitterly. "My council would never allow it. Half of them want to quarantine your species before you contaminate us with your ways. They see you as a threat. A threat? We're one ship. You don't understand. You represent something we have been denied for our entire existence. Some of my people have been watching your broadcasts obsessively. Footage of humans touching, embracing. It's causing unrest. Questions about why we must live this way. The conservatives want you removed before the questions get louder. What do you want?" Ashira looked at him for a long moment. "I want to believe that we don't have to be alone anymore. I want to believe that there is another way to live. But wanting something and achieving it are different things." An alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Ashira's eyes went wide. She touched a control on her wrist and a holographic display appeared. She spoke rapidly in her own language, and the responses came back just as fast. "You need to return to your ship," she said urgently. "Now. What's happening?" "General Corrin, the head of my military forces. He has seen the recordings of our meetings. He is declaring me compromised. Unfit to rule." She looked at him and there was fear in her eyes. "He is coming to remove me from power. And he wants your ship destroyed as evidence of human corruption." Guards burst into the room. Ashira gave rapid orders. They grabbed Taeyang, carefully, never touching his skin, and started dragging him toward the door. "Wait," Taeyang shouted. "What about you?" Ashira stood straight, her shoulders back. "I am the queen. I will deal with Corrin." She met his eyes. "Thank you, Taeyang Park, for showing me that another world is possible, even if I never see it." As they pulled him away, Taeyang watched her stand alone in that room, surrounded by empty space, untouchable. The horizon's promise shook as weapons fire streaked past. On the view screen, the Velrathi fleet was tearing itself apart. Purple ships fired on other purple ships, explosions blooming in the darkness like deadly flowers. Taeyang gripped his seat in the medical bay as another blast rattled the hull. "All hands brace for evasive maneuvers!" Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers. It had been 3 days since Taeyang returned from the Queen's ship. 3 days of watching the Velrathi Empire split into 2 factions. Ashira's supporters held the flagship and about a third of the fleet. General Corrin commanded the rest. And the human ship was trapped right in the middle of it. Dr. Borahan rushed into the medical bay, her face pale. "We just intercepted a broadcast. Corrin is showing recordings to the entire Velrathi Empire." "What recordings?" "You and the Queen, talking, touching. He's calling it corruption, saying that human influence has made her weak and unfit to rule." Bora pulled up the broadcast on her tablet. "Look at what he's saying." On the screen, General Corrin stood before what looked like the Velrathi Council. He was larger than most Velrathi, his armor dark red instead of the usual purple. His voice came through the translator, cold and harsh. "This is what happens when we allow outsiders into our space. The Queen has been seduced by these creatures and their perverse ways. She allows them to touch her, to corrupt her judgment. She speaks of changing our ways, of abandoning the principles that made us strong." The broadcast cut to the footage. Taeyang watched himself place his hand on Ashira's shoulder, watched her close her eyes and cry. In the context Corrin provided, it looked sinister. Like manipulation. "She has forgotten what she is," Corrin continued. "She has forgotten that we are Velrathi. We do not need the weakness of contact." We do not need these humans and their poison. I move to remove Queen Ashira from power and quarantine the human threat permanently. The screen went dark. They're going to kill us, Bora whispered. Before Taeyang could respond, the communication system crackled to life. Human vessel, this is Queen Ashira. I am transmitting coordinates. My forces will cover your escape. You need to run now. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through. Your Majesty, we can't just leave you. You can and you must. Corrin wants you destroyed to prove his point. If you die here, he wins. Please go. Taeyang ran to the bridge. When he arrived, Rodriguez was staring at the view screen, her jaw tight. I can't leave her to die. Captain, Lieutenant Kim said quietly. We have to think about the crew. I know. Rodriguez's hands curled into fists. Helm, prepare to— Wait! Taeyang stepped forward. Let me talk to her, please. Rodriguez looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Open a private channel to the Queen's ship. Ashira's face appeared on a smaller screen. She looked tired but determined. Behind her, Taeyang could see crew members moving frantically, preparing for battle. Your Majesty, there has to be another way, he said. There isn't. Corrin has more ships. More firepower. My faction cannot win a direct fight. The best we can do is give you time to escape. What if there was a different option? Taeyang's mind raced. What if we could show the Velrathi people what you showed me? Not through Corrin's propaganda, but the truth. What truth? That you're not weak. That wanting connection doesn't make you corrupted. That your people deserve better than a lifetime of loneliness. He leaned closer to the screen. Let me help you make a broadcast. Let me explain what we've learned about your species. About how you've been suffering and didn't even know it. Ashira was quiet for a moment. If you do this, you put yourself at risk. Corrin will target you specifically. I'm already at risk. We all are, she smiled sadly. You are very brave, Taeyang Park, or very foolish. She touched something off screen. Very well. I am sending a shuttle to retrieve you. We will make this broadcast together. 20 minutes later, Taeyang stood in what looked like a recording studio aboard Ashira's flagship. Bora had insisted on coming too, bringing all her research data. The Queen stood beside them, her armor polished and formal. This would be broadcast across the entire Velrathi Empire and to the human ship. Ready? Ashira asked. Taeyang nodded. The lights came on. People of the Velrathi Empire, Ashira began. You have seen General Corrin's accusations. You have seen footage of me with the human Taeyang Park. Corrin calls this corruption. I call it enlightenment. She gestured to Bora. Dr. Borahan, please explain your findings. Bora stepped forward, projecting her research. I am a xenobiologist from Earth. I have studied the Velrathi nervous system. Your species has an extremely sensitive neural network, far more sensitive than humans or any other species we have encountered. This sensitivity makes physical contact between your own kind painful, possibly agonizing. She pulled up comparative scans. But this is not natural. Or rather, it is natural for you. But it is an evolutionary accident, a mutation that spread through your population millions of years ago. Your ancestors did not have this sensitivity. They could touch each other without pain just like humans can. Murmurs ran through the crew around them. Ashira held up her hand for silence. What Dr. Han is saying, the Queen continued, is that we are broken. Our species has lived with a disability for so long that we forgot it was not normal. We built an entire civilization around our inability to connect. We told ourselves that independence was strength, that needing others was weakness. But what if we were wrong? She turned to Taeyang. This human has shown me something I thought was impossible. Taeyang, please. Taeyang had thought about what to say during the shuttle ride. Now standing before cameras that broadcast to billions of aliens, his mouth felt dry. But he thought about Ashira standing alone in that room. About an entire species that had never known comfort. I am not a scientist or a leader, he said. I am a medic. My job is to help people who are hurt. When I met Queen Ashira, I saw someone who was in pain. Not physical pain from an injury, but a deeper kind of hurt. The pain of loneliness. He walked closer to Ashira. She asked me why I wouldn't touch her, why I pulled away. And I realized she thought touch was supposed to hurt. She thought I was afraid of being wounded, because for her entire life that is what touch has meant. He held out his hand. Your Majesty, may I? Ashira removed her glove and placed her hand in his. The camera focused on their joined hands. This doesn't hurt, Taeyang said. For humans, touch is how we tell each other that we are not alone. When someone is scared, we hold their hand. When someone is sad, we embrace them. When someone is dying, we stay with them, touching them, so they know they are not facing the dark alone. He looked directly at the camera. Your species has been living in isolation for millions of years. You have built a great civilization. You have conquered stars. But you have done it all alone. Every single one of you alone. His voice grew stronger. General Corrin calls this weakness. I call it the greatest tragedy I have ever witnessed. Ashira spoke again. Corrin says I'm unfit to rule because I want change. He is right about one thing. I do want change. I want our children to grow up knowing comfort. I want our elderly to be held gently in their final days. I want us to know what it means to truly be together, not just near each other. She squeezed Taiyang's hand. This human has offered to help us, not to control us, not to corrupt us, but to show us what we have been denied. I am asking my people, is it worth fighting a civil war to stay broken? Is it worth dying to preserve our loneliness? The broadcast ended. For a moment, the room was silent. Then the communication systems exploded with incoming messages. Hundreds of them. Thousands. One of Ashira's officers looked up from his station, all four eyes wide. My queen, the messages are coming from Corrin's fleet. His crew members they are asking questions. They want to know if what Dr. Han said is true. They want to know if humans can really help us. Another officer spoke up. General Corrin is broadcasting again. He is ordering his fleet to destroy the flagship immediately. But, she paused. Several of his ships are not responding to orders. Ashira looked at Taiyang. You have given us something more dangerous than weapons. You have given us hope. I do not know if that will be enough. It has to be, Taiyang said, because the alternative is everyone dying alone. On the view screen, more ships were breaking formation. Some moved toward Ashira's flagship. Others simply stopped, drifting as their crews made choices that would reshape their entire civilization. The Civil War was not over, but for the first time, Ashira allowed herself to believe it might end in something other than tragedy. Taiyang's communicator buzzed. It was a message from his sister Minji on Earth. The broadcast had reached human space. And his little sister, who always saw the best in people, had written 4 simple words. I want to help. The United Earth Council chamber was full of angry voices. Taiyang watched the live feed from his quarters aboard the Horizon's Promise, which had finally escaped Velrathi space and made it to a neutral system. On the screen, diplomats and representatives from every nation argued with each other in a dozen languages. This is not our problem, shouted the representative from Brazil. We cannot risk becoming entangled in an alien civil war. It's not about politics, countered the Japanese delegate. This is a humanitarian crisis. An entire species is suffering. A species we barely know, someone else interjected. How do we know this isn't some elaborate trap? Taiyang turned down the volume. He had been watching for 3 hours, and they were no closer to a decision. The debate had been going on for 5 days now, ever since the footage of Ashira's broadcast reached Earth. The planet was divided. Some people saw the Velrathi as potential allies. Others saw them as dangerous aliens who could turn on humanity at any moment. His tablet buzzed with another message. This one from Minji. His sister had been sending him updates constantly. They're organizing protests in Seoul, she wrote. Thousands of people demanding that Earth help the Velrathi. Medical staff are offering to volunteer. Taiyang, I want to be one of them. He typed back quickly. It's dangerous. We don't even know if we're allowed to help yet. That's why I'm going to the council tomorrow. I'm testifying. Taiyang felt his stomach drop. What? They asked for perspectives from medical professionals. I volunteered. Someone needs to speak for the people who want to help. Before he could respond, Captain Rodriguez called everyone to the conference room. When Taiyang arrived, the entire senior staff was there, along with Dr. Bora Han. The council has requested our testimony, Rodriguez said. They want to hear directly from the people who met the Velrathi. Park, they specifically asked for you. 12 hours later, Taiyang stood before the United Earth Council. The chamber was even more intimidating in person. Representatives from every nation sat in curved rows, their faces skeptical. At the center sat the Secretary General, an elderly woman from Kenya named Amara Ochieng. Corporal Park, she said, her voice kind but firm, you have spent more time with Queen Ashira than any other human. Tell us, can we trust her? Taeyang thought carefully about his answer. I think she genuinely wants to help her people. She is asking for our assistance, not our control. She doesn't want humans to rule the Velrathi. She wants us to teach them something they have lost. And what would this assistance look like? Asked the American representative. Medical personnel, therapists, people trained in physical therapy and trauma counseling. He pulled up the data Bora had prepared. The Velrathi have been living with what is essentially a species-wide sensory disorder. Treating it will require patience and expertise, but it is possible. At what cost? The Chinese delegate leaned forward. We would be sending thousands of humans into an alien empire in the middle of a civil war. The risk is enormous. The opportunity is also enormous, Bora spoke up from her seat. If we help the Velrathi, we gain a powerful ally. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their empire spans hundreds of systems. The knowledge exchange alone would be invaluable. So this is about profit? Someone shouted from the back. No, Taeyang said firmly. This is about doing the right thing. The Velrathi are suffering. We have the ability to help them. Isn't that enough? The Secretary General studied him. You make it sound simple, Corporal. But nothing is ever simple in politics. Maybe that's the problem, Taeyang said. We are overthinking this. There is a species asking for help. We can give it. Everything else is just fear. Fear keeps us safe, someone muttered. Fear also keeps us isolated, Taeyang countered. The Velrathi have lived in fear of contact for millions of years. Look where it got them. A civilization of lonely people who cannot comfort each other. Is that what we want? To be so afraid of risk that we turn our backs on people who need us? The chamber went quiet. Secretary General Ochieng nodded slowly. Thank you, Corporal Park. We will take your testimony into consideration. As Taeyang left the chamber, he passed another waiting room. Inside, he saw Minji. His sister jumped up and hugged him tight, a simple human gesture that most people took for granted. But after spending time with the Velrathi, Taeyang felt the weight of it differently now. The warmth, the connection, the reminder that he was not alone. Your turn, he told her. Minji went in and Taeyang waited. When she emerged an hour later, she looked exhausted but determined. What did you tell them? He asked. The truth. That I am a psychiatric nurse. That I have worked with trauma patients for 8 years. That I know what isolation does to people. She looked at him. And that if the council votes not to help, I will go anyway. Because that is what we do. We help people who are hurting. News of the testimonies spread across Earth within hours. Social media exploded with debates. But something was shifting. More and more people were coming forward offering to volunteer. Medical professionals, teachers, therapists, scientists. They came from every country, every background. All of them saying the same thing. They wanted to help. Meanwhile, in Velrathi space, the civil war continued. Ashira's forces were losing ground. General Korin had more ships and more firepower. Reports came in daily of Velrathi killing each other, unable to even hold their wounded as they died. 5 days after the testimonies, the United Earth Council called for a vote. Taeyang watched from the horizon's promise as the votes came in. It was close, painfully close, but when the final count appeared on the screen, he felt tears in his eyes. The motion passed. Earth would send aid to the Velrathi. Within hours, volunteers were being organized. Medical ships were being prepared. The first wave would include 2,000 humans, doctors, nurses, therapists, and support staff. Minji sent him a message with a photo. She was standing on a transport ship with hundreds of other volunteers, all of them wearing blue uniforms marked with both the Earth insignia and a new symbol. 2 hands clasped together, 1 human and 1 Velrathi. I'm coming to help, she wrote. Try not to worry too much, big brother. Taeyang smiled despite his fear. His little sister, heading into a war zone to help an alien species learn how to touch again. But the victory was short-lived. News came from Velrathi space that made everyone freeze. General Korin had cornered Ashira's flagship. She was trapped, surrounded by enemy ships. Korin was broadcasting across all channels, demanding her surrender. If she refused, he would destroy the flagship and everyone on it. Ashira's response came through an hour later. Taeyang watched her face on the screen, proud and tired. General Korin, you say I have betrayed our people by seeking help from humans. You call me weak for wanting change. But I say that the true weakness is being so afraid of the different that we would rather die alone than live together. She stood tall, her armor gleaming. I will not surrender. If you want to kill me, you will have to do it. But know this, the humans are coming. Whether I live or die, they are coming to help us, and your bullets cannot stop hope. The broadcast ended. Corin gave her 6 hours to reconsider. Captain Rodriguez looked at her crew. We need to do something. We can't fight them, Lieutenant Kim said. We're one exploration vessel. I know. Rodriguez pulled up a star chart. But the volunteer fleet is 3 days behind us. If we can buy a Shira time, we'll be destroyed, someone said quietly. Maybe. Rodriguez looked at each of them. I won't order anyone to do this. But I'm going back. Anyone who wants to come with me can. Anyone who wants to take a shuttle to safety can do that too. No judgment either way. The crew looked at each other. Then one by one they nodded. Taeyang found himself smiling. This was what it meant to be human. Not that they were braver or stronger than anyone else, but that when someone needed help they showed up. Even when it was dangerous, even when it was foolish. The Horizon's Promise turned around and headed back into Velrothi space. They had 3 days to reach Ashira. 3 days to figure out how one small human ship could stand against an alien armada. In his quarters, Taeyang recorded a message to Minji. If you're watching this, it means something went wrong. I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Keep helping them. Keep showing them that touch doesn't have to mean pain. Keep being the best of what humanity can be. He paused. And Minji? Thank you for teaching me to hug people when I was scared. I never told you, but that made all the difference. He sent the message, then went to the medical bay to prepare. They were running toward a battle they could not win. But Ashira had taught him something important. Sometimes the fight itself was the point. Sometimes showing up was enough. The Horizon's Promise dropped out of faster-than-light travel to find hell waiting for them. Ashira's flagship was surrounded by 40 enemy vessels, their weapons charged and ready. General Corin's command ship sat at the center of the formation, dark and menacing. The ultimatum had expired 2 hours ago. Corin was preparing to fire. We're too late, Lieutenant Kim whispered. Captain Rodriguez gripped her command chair. Open all channels. Broadcast on every frequency the Velrothi use. Captain? The communications officer looked confused. Just do it. The channels opened. Rodriguez took a breath. General Corin, this is Captain Maria Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Horizon's Promise. You wanted the humans gone from Velrothi space? Well, we're not leaving. We're staying right here. Corin's face appeared on the view screen. His 4 eyes blazed with anger. One human ship. Do you think you can stop me? No, Rodriguez said calmly. I don't. But I can make you destroy us first. And I can make sure everyone sees it. Every Velrothi in your empire, every human back on Earth, they'll all watch you murder the people who came to help you. Help? Corin laughed. You offer corruption disguised as kindness. Then let me ask you something, General. Rodriguez leaned forward. When was the last time someone held you when you were afraid? When was the last time you felt comfort? When you die, who will be there to touch your hand so you don't face the dark alone? Corin's expression froze. You can kill us, Rodriguez continued. You can kill the Queen. But 3 days behind me, there are 2,000 more humans coming. Medical personnel. Volunteers. People who want to help your species learn to touch again without pain. Are you going to kill them too? All of them? And what about the humans after that? And after that? How many will you murder to protect your loneliness? The channel went silent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Corin spoke, his voice quieter. I have fought in wars for 200 years. I have commanded fleets across the Empire. I have never once been held. He looked directly at the camera. Do you know what that is like? To live for centuries and never know comfort? No, Taeyang said, stepping forward into view. I don't, but I know someone who does. Queen Ashira knows. Every single Velrothi knows. And they're all asking the same question you are. Does it have to be this way? Corin closed his eyes. All 4 of them. When he opened them again, something had changed in his face. If I let the Queen live, my people will call me weak. Your people will call you wise, Ashira's voice cut in. Her broadcast appeared on a split screen. She looked exhausted but unbowed. Corin, we have been enemies for a century. We have disagreed on everything. But I know you are not cruel. You are afraid. We are all afraid. Afraid of what? Corin demanded. Of hope. Of the possibility that we have been wrong. That we have lived our entire history accepting a suffering we did not have to endure. She removed her helmet, showing her face. I am terrified, Corin. Terrified that change will destroy us. Terrified that humans will hurt us. But I am more terrified of another 1,000,000 years of living the way we have. Aren't you? Taeyang watched Corin's face. The general's hands were shaking. If I surrender, what happens? We try something new, Ashira said. We let the humans teach us. If it fails, you can tell everyone you were right. But if it works, her voice softened. If it works, Corin, your children might grow up knowing what it feels like to be held. The general was quiet for a long time. His fleet waited. The human ship waited. The entire moment balanced on a knife's edge. Stand down, Corin said finally. All ships, stand down. Open a channel to the human fleet. Tell them, he paused. Tell them we need their help. 3 days later, the volunteer fleet arrived. Taeyang stood on the landing platform as shuttle after shuttle descended. Minji was on the third one. When she stepped out, still wearing her blue uniform, he ran to her and hugged her so tight she laughed. Can't breathe, big brother. Sorry. He released her but kept his hands on her shoulders. I can't believe you're really here. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. She looked around at the Velrathi station, her eyes wide. Where do we start? The answer was everywhere. The human volunteers spread across Ashira's territory, setting up medical centers and therapy stations. At first, the Velrathi were terrified. Centuries of conditioning made them flinch away from any approach, but slowly, carefully, the humans began their work. Taeyang watched Minji work with a young Velrathi soldier who had been injured in the Civil War. The soldier sat stiffly in a chair, all 4 eyes wide with fear. My name is Minji, his sister said gently. I'm a nurse. I'm going to examine your injury, but I'll tell you before I touch you, okay? You can say no at any time. The soldier nodded hesitantly. I'm going to place my hand on your shoulder now, just for a moment. It won't hurt. Minji slowly, carefully placed her palm on the soldier's shoulder. The Velrathi gasped, then went very still. A tear rolled down their scaled face. It doesn't hurt, they whispered. No, Minji said softly. It doesn't have to hurt. Over the following weeks, scenes like this played out across dozens of stations. Human volunteers working with Velrathi patients, teaching them that touch could mean comfort. Some Velrathi adapted quickly. Hungry for connection, they had been denied. Others struggled, their conditioning too deep. But slowly and possibly, change began. Queen Ashira invited Taeyang to her private chambers one evening. She looked different now, tired but hopeful. She wore simpler clothes and she wasn't wearing gloves. General Corin came to see me today, she said. How did that go? He asked me to touch his hand. She smiled. So I did. He cried for an hour. 2 centuries of loneliness, and he cried like a child. It was the most honest I have ever seen him. She walked to the window overlooking the station. Below they could see Velrathi and humans walking together. Some Velrathi still kept their distance, but others walked close to their human guides, occasionally allowing brief contact. There will be setbacks, Ashira said. Some of my people will never accept this. Some humans will grow frustrated with how slowly we learn. This will not be easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, Taeyang said. She turned to him. Taeyang Park, you changed my world by answering one simple question. When I asked why you wouldn't touch me, you showed me that touch didn't have to mean pain. You gave my entire species permission to hope. She held out her hand. Thank you. He took her hand and shook it. The gesture had become familiar now, but it still made her smile every time. What happens now? He asked. Now we build something new. A society where Velrathi children grow up knowing comfort, where our elderly can be held as they die, where we are not alone anymore. She looked out at the mixed crowd below. It will take generations, but we have time. 6 months later, Taeyang sat in a classroom teaching young Velrathi about human customs of touch. They were children, only 50 or 60 years old, and they learned faster than the adults. One of them raised their hand. Teacher Taeyang, my parents says that before humans came, we thought we were complete. We thought our way was the only way. Were we wrong? Taeyang thought carefully. Not wrong, just limited. Sometimes we don't know what we're missing until someone shows us. Your people taught humans something too. You taught us that loneliness can become so normal that you forget you're lonely. You taught us never to take connection for granted. Another student spoke up. Will you stay? Will humans always be here to help us? Some will stay. But eventually you won't need us anymore. You'll teach each other. Velrathi helping other Velrathi. That's the goal. After class, Taeyang met Minji for dinner. She had been working at a rehabilitation center, helping Velrathi, who had lived for centuries without touch, learn how to accept it. I had a patient today, she said. 400 years old. She let me hold her hand for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and she said it was the most connected she had felt in her entire life. Minji's eyes were wet. How did they survive? All these centuries, all these people, and they survived without ever knowing comfort? They're strong, Taeyang said. Stronger than they know. We all are, Minji agreed. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Hey, remember when you used to have nightmares after Dad died? Mom would send me to your room to sleep next to you. You always slept better when someone was there. I remember. That's what we're doing here. We're teaching an entire species that it's okay to need someone. That wanting comfort isn't weakness, and she smiled. Pretty good work for a small planet, huh? 1 year after first contact, Queen Ashira stood before the Velrathi Council and the human delegation. Behind her stood General Korin, who had become her strongest ally. The civil war was over. Most of the Empire had accepted the change, though pockets of resistance remained. Today marks the anniversary of the day humans entered our space, Ashira said. We feared them. We called them corruption. But they showed us something we had forgotten, that we were meant to connect, that our ancestors, before the mutation that made us this way, knew touch without pain. She gestured to the humans in the room. These people came to us not as conquerors, but as teachers, not as masters, but as friends. They have given us a gift beyond measure, and in return I offer them this, a place in our empire, not as servants, not as subjects, but as partners, as equals.